channel. My name is Roxanne, the Tiny Taster, and today's recipe is a fab shepherd's pie. Now this is a great recipe for a nice big family meal. It's a classic recipe. I've just tweaked it slightly. It's also called a shepherd's pie because it's usually made with lamb, not chicken, but I've used goat mince instead because I don't have lamb over here, but ideally lamb mince would be great. It's delicious either which way, so don't worry about that. I'll leave a link down below on my website, The Tiny Taster, which will have the detailed recipe. As always, please check the link in the description box for measurements and things like that. If you like this recipe, make sure to like it, give it a big fat like, leave me a comment, subscribe to this channel, and of course share it with all your friends. So without any further ado, let's get cooking.
In a pot, you'll add some oil and then add in your chopped onions. Saute this for a minute or so and then add in a little bit of ginger garlic paste. Cook it for a minute so that all that raw garlicky taste is gone, and then go ahead and add in your chopped carrots. You could use any vegetables of your choice, carrots, celery. I like to stick with carrots. Cook this down for another minute or so and then add in some chopped garlic. I know we've already added ginger garlic paste, but I like the freshness of some nice raw chopped garlic. To this base, add in your minced meat. Now this is called a shepherd's pie. Traditionally, you use minced lamb. I do not have lamb. I have minced goat or minced mutton, so I've used that. I suppose goat herders are also shepherds, so it still sticks and it's traditional, but any minced meat works. Cook this down, break up any lumps that you may have, and to this meat you will add in some nice fresh or even dried rosemary. I have dried, but fresh is always better. I like a little bit of heat, though it's not traditional, so I add in some chili flakes, and then I think a nice flavor is cumin, so I add in cumin powder as well, along with a generous amount of salt for all that meat. You can play around with the seasonings and flavors, but this is something that I really like. Mix it all together and cook it for about 10 minutes. You'll notice the meat starts to cook when it releases a little bit of water or liquid. Now we want to try and get a nice thickish sauce, nothing too liquidy. So to your meat, you will add in flour. It can be cornstarch or corn flour or even just regular whole wheat flour, but this is sort of a binding. And to that, you will add in about a cup of water or chicken stock. I've used water just because I didn't have any chicken stock. Stock obviously will add more flavor. And then you will cook this down into a gravy format and let it start thickening. I add in some tomato puree or tomato paste, just a little bit, maybe a spoon or so, to add a little bit of sweetness, and then mix it all together with this meaty gravy. This has been cooking now for about 15 minutes, I want to say, yeah. And at this stage, I'll also add in some chopped coriander. I know it's not traditional at all, but I just think it adds so much flavor. You could add parsley, you could even add some mint. I mean, the trick here is to make this your own. As the meat is cooking, the last thing that I add is peas. I've added it towards the end because I've used frozen peas and I don't want it to overcook and become mushy. I want it to retain a little bit of that bite, but if you are using fresh peas, then please add it in at the very beginning because they take so long to cook. So you need to cook this entire meat mixture, at least I like to cook it for a grand total of 20 or 25 minutes. It's been about 15 minutes or so at this stage, so I'm just going to cover it with a lid and let this cook for another 10 minutes. And then when you take it off the lid after 10 minutes, you'll notice it starts really bubbling, and what I'm trying to do is reduce all that excess water to get a thicker gravy. I'll keep cooking this down for maybe another 10 minutes. So maybe this is a total of 30 minutes that has been cooking. So at least you know that your meat is completely cooked. But I'll just use the back of my spoon to mix it around. And when I notice that it is thick enough that it starts sort of pushing back, almost like how a risotto does, you get that nice thick goopy gravy. That's when you know that this is done. So you can switch off the flame and set this aside. Once your meat mixture is cooked, you're going to transfer all of it into an oven-proof baking dish. You could use whatever size dish that you have. It can be circular or square or rectangle. I've used half a kilo of minced meat. I put all the details and ingredients and amounts in the description box in my blog post as usual. But I used a smaller dish because I thought that it would be nice and compact. I didn't use one that's too big. Just transfer all the meat into this dish, and then with the back of your spoon just layer it out evenly, just so that everything is in one uniform layer, and it's the first half or the base of your shepherd's pie. Now, whilst this minced part is all ready, we'll get to the second half of this recipe. Whilst you're cooking your meat, you can boil some potatoes. I've taken about 5 or 6 large potatoes and that I've peeled and boiled them nicely. To this, you will add in a nice blob of butter, followed by a generous helping of some grated cheese. You could use any really. Add in 1 whole egg and then about half a cup of milk. And then use a nice potato masher and mash this down to make a gorgeous mashed potato. That's the filling or the topping for this recipe. Just make sure that you get all the ingredients, the egg, the milk, the cheese, and of course make sure that there are no lumps. You could use a fork if you don't have this, or a spoon, whatever you use to mash your potatoes, even a whisk just to whisk it all together, but just try and get a nice creamy texture. Please note that this works well only when your potatoes are nice and hot. So don't boil your potatoes and then let them sit on the side. Just let them be in the boiling water or in that hot water till you're ready to mash them. Once your mash is all ready, this is the fun part. You just scoop the potato on top of your minced mixture. Make sure that you cover it completely. You could just scoop it in any haphazard pattern. It doesn't really matter. But just ensure that even the edges, all parts of this baking dish is covered generously with your creamy mashed potatoes. People like to take a spatula and pat it down or make designs even with a fork. I don't really bother. I like this sort of rustic, it almost looks like a mountain like terrain. I just like this. I think it's also easier and it's no fuss. Place all your mashed potatoes on this. If you like, you can smoothen it with the back of a spoon, whatever works for you, but there's no hard or fast rule. Just ensure that everything is covered, especially the corners, because it's very important for your pie. Once your shepherd's pie is all ready with the mash and the meat, you will pop this into the oven and cook it for about 30 to 40 minutes at 200 degrees Celsius. And once that's done, you will notice that the top bits start to brown and crispen up a bit. This is the beauty. It just looks lovely. It's actually the egg and the cheese, those bits that tend to get burnt, and it gives it this lovely covering on top. It's crisp and delicious. And this is really it. Your shepherd's pie is done. Now, if you were me and impatient, you would just take a spoon and scoop it out, but traditionally you cut nice little square pieces like this very gently, and you'll notice it's a little bit hard because the top crust is a little thicker. It's not that creamy mash, and it makes all the difference. And that's what it really looks like. You've got the meat on the bottom, and then you've got a nice thick crust with all that potato, and it is just delicious. This is a great one-pot meal. It's a great family meal. Like, you can make a nice big batch and it will serve an easy 4 to 6 people depending on how much meat and potatoes you've used. But it is so yum. I promise you, you will love it. Please feel free to customize this as per you like. A traditional recipe will have celery, will not have any heat, will not have any spices. You can mix and match and even do like an Indian desi keema and add the mashed potatoes. It is yum. I really hope you've enjoyed this recipe. As always, don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys very, very soon.